What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. My name is Kevin, and we're joined with Zach Stone up here for our Monday weekly Meta Watch video. We do these videos every Monday, and we're going to go over Lorcana meta trends and mulligan strategies and more. It's the beginning of Reign of Jafar season. There was a couple tournaments. We're going to go over about 5 different tournament results where, most of them have been first place Amber Steel results. It's actually kind of crazy. We're going to go over a bunch of deck lists today. Shout out to all these tournament organizers. Shout out Zach Stone for being here.
The weekend of Reign of Jafar release has gone by. We had a couple tournaments happen, and yes, some awesome deck lists that got to show off some of the new support. So yeah, we're going to go over a lot of tournament results as well as deck lists, but make sure to drop your deck lists in our Discord using the link down below so we can feature you on our next Meta Watch video.
Starting off with this first place list from the Dragons Horde Reign of Jafar Elsa tournament. So if you got first place at this tournament, you received a Gem 10 Elsa Enchanted, which was pretty cool. Huge shout out to Traverse Tavern and Lucas Serrano for splitting first place with the exact same deck list. Here's an Amber Steel list that features the new Rhino from the Reign of Jafar set. We have 2 rhinos actually. A 1-cost rhino that is inkable. He has 1 strength, 2 willpower, and an ability that says on play you have to choose an opposing character, lower its strength by 1 until the start of your turn, which could be pretty relevant because it means some of your characters might survive potential quests. There's no Daisy in this deck, which I really want to note immediately because I'm seeing the Rhino and the Cinderella. And then we have this Shift Rhino because this acts as an extra shift package, right, Zach Stone? You can shift it on turn 2. Rhino is a 4-cost inkable, 4 strength, 3 willpower that quests for 2 every single turn. And while he has no damage, he gains resist +2. So almost kind of like a 4/5 body.
Yes, that Rhino is pretty well statted, and for questing for 2 early on, being a little bit difficult to remove might be a problem for some decks. One thing I do want to point out, it is not a 5-cost shift 2 like the Queen is, so you're not able to sing a whole new world when you shift on top of them. But in a lot of matchups, I can see this card being very strong, even just playing as a 4-cost body, because that's a pretty well statted character. Ruby's going to have a hard time removing it with that magic 4 number strength, and on top of it all, you have the Miss Bianca to sing your songs. Is Rhino an ally?
Yup, Rhino is an ally, so it synergizes perfectly with any of your ally strategies like the Miss Bianca, like you mentioned. And I think really you just want to have some big bodies to keep questing with when you're playing Amber Steel right now in this current format. And resist is underrated. I've always liked that Steel has this resist ability in their color pool, which lets you confidently quest with some characters and gives them a lot more survivability, right? For lack of a better term. And in top 8 of this Reign of Jafar tournament, we have a Ruby Sapphire list by Eric, who actually did not add any new Reign of Jafar cards to their deck and managed to, still make top 8 of this tournament. Dragon's Horde actually held 2 different tournaments this opening weekend. One of them was that Elsa 10 tournament, and they also held a Reign of Jafar case tournament where the new set was legal for both. And in second place, we have another Amber Steel list by Nathan Shackles. Huge shout out you. Also playing Rhino. Looking like Nathan got some, inspiration from Lucas Serrano and Traverse Tavern and decided to also try the Rhino package out with the Ms. Bianca. You got World's Greatest Criminal Mind in this list and Bare Necessities, which I think are very good cards. And Grab Your Swords. Grab Your Swords, I think, with the rise of the popularity of Prince John, as we've been seeing on stream, I think Grab Your Swords might be one of those cards to look into, especially because we're seeing Prince Naveen also in these lists. Zach, as an Amber Steel enjoyer, why is Prince Naveen kind of making its way back into this early meta?
It's interesting because there is no new songs that came out to allow Prince Naveen to get some extra utility with. So it might just be that the demand to take back tempo is a little bit more urgent. And that's what Prince Naveen can do. When you're playing him, you're immediately able to cast a song. You have a lot of removal songs in your card pool, so you're going to be able to remove a character more than likely. And that might just be enough right now. Again, being able to cast Grab Your Swords for free with Prince Naveen, it's also another way to make sure you get rid of those pesky warded characters as early as turn 4. But yeah, it may or may not stick around. I think Prince Naveen is fine. You aren't playing Daisy Duck, which again adds to the uninkable count, and you feel like you're forced to play a lot of uninkables already with Steel Song. So it does force you to shift a different play pattern, and that's why we're seeing the Rhino included in this list. It's another 1-drop body, of course, and it has a decent shift target. So Prince Naveen might be here to stay. Overall, I think the card's powerful and it isn't getting rotated out, so make sure to get some copies if you guys do not have any yet. And the next deck that we have right here from the Dragon Sword tournament, and that's the same one, of course, Old Faithful. This is Kevin's old reliable deck, Ruby Amethyst. And yeah, we have some interesting card choices in here. And we do have some new cards, of course, from Reign of Jafar. But one thing I do want to point out, we got Skater Mim in the list, and I love seeing Skater Mim, but no Shift Rhino Mim. We're not playing the new Shift Rhino Mim because I feel like, one, that's a little bit too expensive of a card, and you're not really wanting to give up so much tempo right away. You still have a lot of early aggressive pressure with this deck, so you don't need something big to take out bodies when you already have Madam Mim Fox. And on top of that, you have the Peter Pan Shadow Finder. So he is able to allow your other evasive characters to have rush. And you got the Iago, you got the Moana. These are going to be some pretty strong characters to help deal with those pesky cards. And everybody's mad here. This is the new 7 cost action that reads, you banish the chosen character and gain lore equal to the damage on it. So you can throw a lot of damage with these cards into certain characters and kind of cheese out the lore win with that. Kevin, do you like this list? What are your thoughts, you Ruby Am enjoyer?
Yeah, this is one of those evasive lists, a huge counter to a Diablo style deck. So if you have a lot of Diablo, the Devoted Herald at your local meta, maybe you might want to try and play this style of Ruby Amethyst. However, I do think it's not the only way you can play this color combination. I really like this list going into this, potential early game meta because you have a lot of cards that are just really overpowered. Yeah, Maui Half Sharks, you have 4 Be Prepared, very classic. Pirate's Life is going to be able to definitely counter some of these Amber Steel aggro strategies. Oftentimes, a lot of the decks against Ruby Amethyst will just quest against you in the early game, and Pirate's Life can kind of get that game back for you. But I love the addition of Most Everyone's Mad here. I actually had this conversation with someone yesterday because they asked me, hey, is this card just broken? Because they actually thought that at first read you can manage multiple characters, right? Shout out Omar, by the way. But we thought about it and we're like, oh, the way it's worded is kind of awkward, right? Because yeah, gain lore equal to the damage on chosen character, then banish them. It's meaning the character. So it's only for one character, but there's a lot of potential here, right? So it's like a Dragonfire with an extra ability to potentially gain an extra burst of lore. So I wonder how many times they were able to use Madam M Fox to challenge into something like a Tamatoa, and then you activate Mad here, and you gain like 4 lore and banish the character, right? It seems a little counterintuitive that you're banishing a damaged character, but there's also a world where you banish your own damaged character, which can be pretty cool too, and you have huge willpower characters like Iago the Spectral Parrot that has 6 willpower, so there's probably some situations where you can swing your Iago into maybe a Pluto that's not damaged yet, and then you use Most Everyone is Mad here, and bam, you gain 5 lore. So little tricks and combos you can do with these cards that I think are going to start being unlocked in this new format. And huge shout out again to Eric for getting top 8 at the tournament at the same store the next day with the same Ruby Sapphire deck list and item style deck list. Once again, not playing a single card from the new Reign of Jafar set. So if you don't want to buy any new booster boxes, you can confidently still play Ruby Sapphire just the same.
And Eric, if you are watching this video, please let us know in the comments down below why you chose not to play Reign of Jafar cards.
And in top 8 of this Dragon Hordes case tournament for Reign of Jafar, we have Esjarena over here with a Blurple deck list featuring new cards like Into the Unknown, 4 copies of this card in this deck. A very powerful, somewhat of a let it go that you don't have to pay 5 ink for. You can actually only pay 3 ink to choose an opposing character and put it into your opponent's Inkwell Exerted. And this combos off very well with your Elsa Fit Spirit, your Elsa Spirit of Winter, stuff like that. And there's even situations where you can sing this on turn 2 with your Belle Apprentice Inventor. So now you have multiple songs you can sing early, not just Friends on the Other Side. And Zach, they're playing Monstro, 2 copies of the 8-cost Monstro, 6 strength, 8 willpower character. This character can quest for 2. He has Rush and a very strong ability where you can choose and discard a card. You can ready this character. They can't quest for the rest of the turn, but this means that because this character has Rush, you can challenge multiple characters on the same turn they're played. And if the Monstro survives, there's even situations where you can sing multiple times with this Monstro, dude. You know, you're not playing many songs in this deck list, but there's a world where you can go sing Friends on the Other Side, draw 2, discard a card, ready it again, sing friends on the other side, draw two, discard a card, ready it again, right?
Yeah, and I'm actually curious if Into the Unknown is going to be more of like the precedent going forward. Are we going to see Let It Go being played? I still think a copy or two might be necessary. There might be some characters that aren't exerting themselves, and you do have plays like Elsa to be able to exert them for yourself. It may not be enough. So my thoughts are that Let It Go could be additional tools to have as well as Into the Unknown, because there could be some variance factors for the characters that you want to get rid of and characters that you can't get rid of. Again, Maui Shark can re-ready itself with a lot of other tools that we have access to, so you may not have an opportunity to get rid of an exerted Maui Shark. However, there might be some room to cut that card as well and play other stuff in red blue. So we could see different decks take different paths, and I like that we're starting to see that happen right now when the first weekend is just upon us.
Shout out to Mark Miller for doing extremely well at the Southside Gaming Reign of Jafar release tournament. This was a huge tournament. Zach Stone had about 90 players, and first place was this Emerald Steel deck list piloted by Mark Miller, featuring 2 copies of Beyond the Horizon, which we have been seeing this card just pop off on streams in our own little testing groups, man. It's, in my opinion, the best card of the set, and it's only an uncommon, so it's like a quarter. It's like 50 cents. It is not an expensive card. The cold foils are going up in price this last week that I checked. They're definitely more than $10. But aside from that, it's a pretty standard Emerald Steel list. A couple key cards I would like to mention real quick though, like I Find on My Platinum, which is a 4-cost action that just simply says banish all items. Not something I honestly expected to see in a top deck list going into the beginning of the format, just because I feel like the item decks aren't as huge or prevalent. But maybe Mark Miller knows his local meta. Maybe there's some Ruby Sapphire item decks that are popping off over there. And then 1 copy of Grab Your Swords. 1 copy of Grab Your Swords. Zach, this is the second time we see Grab Your Swords in these top cut deck lists from these like 5 tournaments we're going over today.
Yes, Grab Your Sword might be a card that is going to make its way back into the meta. Just keep in mind, everyone, Grab Your Sword almost is unplayable versus red blue. So there are some decks where it just doesn't do anything against. And it can be the, difference factor into other matchups too. You do have to remember that in deck building in this game, you can't sway one side or too much on into certain matchups, because you will get punished if you don't play against those matchups. So I like that they're just limiting themselves to like 1 copy of these cards and not oversaturating their deck list by playing like 2 or 3. Again, it is very unique and has good capabilities into a lot of other decks, but there are some matchups where the card is just unplayable.
Green Steel popping off so much already in the beginning of this format. Zach Stone with a 3rd place finish at this same tournament. This list looks a little bit different. Shout out to this player. It looks like it's called Dale's Toolbox. Very interesting. A couple cards in here that are being featured, again, Beyond the Horizon. But we also have this new chip. It's a 4-cost inkable emerald character, 3 strength, 2 willpower, that says when you play this character, chosen opponent chooses and discards a card. It's a pretty simple effect, it's just like a sudden chill with a body. However, playing this on curve, Prince John on turn 3, turn 4, you play chip, you make your opponent discard something. I think that's really good, right? You're playing a body, you're triggering the ability, your opponent discards a card, and you're drawing a card if you have that curve. Pretty good, man. Maybe they might not see this coming either.
Yes, I know that there's other 4-cost cards that do discard cards like Friar Tuck, but that might be a sign that Friar Tuck doesn't make it in the rotation next meta. So, yeah, Chip's here to replace that. And plus, Friar Tuck has a little bit of a condition implying that you have to have less cards in order to make your opponent discard a card, or else you end up discarding a card, which you don't want to do that.
Yeah, this is a guaranteed discard, which is really important, I think. You don't want to take any risks when you're playing a deck like Green Steel. I think Green Steel is such a strong deck to play. It's kind of punishing, though. Like, I've been saying this to people. It has such a high skill ceiling where if you're not doing the right plays, you're not inking the right cards, it's kind of harder to get to your win con. But if you know exactly how to play this deck and what to do with this deck, oh, yeah, you're going to cook some people. You're going to be able to shift Pete, stop them from singing songs. Every card is like a control card that's in action in this deck. We don't talk about Bruno, Strength, Storm. You have so much removal on the board. Then you have the hand removal too, Hypnotize, Sudden Chill, Beyond the Horizon. I like it. Even the one copy of Cricky to make sure you can get some good challenges in there. Green Steel players, rise up. It's your time to shine, I think. And if you were watching the Southside Gaming live stream on Twitch yesterday, then you got to see the awesome battle between this Ruby Amethyst list piloted by Dylan and the first place Green Steel list. I am a huge Ruby Amethyst fan, and when I first saw this list, I told Zach, like, ooh, I really love the way this looks, man. This is so cool. It's like a toolbox Ruby Amethyst list. We have multiple one of copies of cards like Dragonfire. Everybody's got a weakness. Monstro, Tremaine, all of these cards played only at one. One Genie feels very like a toolbox Ruby Amethyst list. Everybody's got a weakness is a card that I've been seeing a lot of people kind of play around with in the Ruby Amethyst color combination. It's a 4-cost inkable action that says move one damage counter from each damaged character you have in play to a chosen opposing character, then draw a card for each counter moved this way. So you can draw multiple cards with this card, and you can technically deal multiple damage around the board with this card. It's only going to be 1 damage per character that you move, though, so it is a little weird. If you have multiple damaged characters, you can move 1 damage each onto one opposing character and kind of deal like 3 damage to them, right? It is cool because it does play around resist. 4 cost is kind of high for this, so I can see why they only played 1. And I like the addition of Monstro in this deck too. Zach, how do you feel about this Ruby Amethyst kind of evasive, kind of toolbox list by Dylan Crowley here?
Well, first and foremost, I want to kind of point out one thing that I first looked at was the 1 copy of Genie and the 4 copies of Rabbit. That's a very good response to what they firmly believed would be a green steel discard meta, and Rabbit's a more superior card in that matchup than Genie. Yes, Genie is evasive and can move Diablo. However, you need to have consistent card draw. Muses is a card, and that card can bounce that Genie, and you're not getting a card whenever it is returned. So the Rabbit allows consistent card draw against those green steel decks, and you really just need to get to a Be Prepared, really, in that matchup, because you can't get rid of Prince John anyway, and that's one of the cleanest answers to that deck overall. But I love the fact that they just have a bunch of characters in there. It's like a monster mash with a lot of good tools and utility, like you mentioned earlier. So overall, solid list. And I got to give a shout out to Southside Gaming. During their live stream, they had a giveaway for a case, and our boy Arnold won one. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah, he got selected for a
What?
case. So shout out
Arnold?
to you guys.
Arnold did? That's
Yeah,
them deals, Arnold.
our
That's
homie.
crazy. Okay,
So
wow.
shout outs to Arnold, someone that I feel like does deserve to win that case. So yeah, it's awesome to see them give back to the community.
Yeah, huge shout out to Southside Gaming, man. They're awesome people, awesome tournament organizers. More and more Diablo decks. Zach Stone this time with Amethyst Emerald. And this is probably one of the most consistent Diablo decks because this has Diablo, 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 and Diablo all in the same deck. So I really like the addition of Emerald Amethyst in this Meta Watch video that we're doing because it was getting a little scary seeing all that steel in the meta pool. But you know, Emerald Amethyst is also a very strong deck you can play. We have some discard synergy here because we're playing 4 copies of Sudden Chill, 4 copies of Bruno, and the 2 copy of Prince John. I know I've said this before in other videos, and I'm gonna stick by it. I think if any card deserved ever to be banned in Emerald, it's probably Prince John over Diablo. You know, there is a world where they both get rotated out because unfortunately they are from sets 1 through 4. But if I had to choose one to get banned, it's Prince John every time because that ward ability, that the fact that you cannot interact with Prince John unless you have something like Grab Your Swords or Be King Undisputed or something like that, it's just so unfair because it's in the early game and your opponent just gets so much value off the resources, especially if they're playing some of these new cards like Pull the Lever, which is a 3-cost inkable action that says choose one. You either draw 2 cards or each opponent chooses and discards a card. You got more Prince John synergy right there, right? And then we're even playing 3 copies of the Wrong Lever to combo off with it, which is only an Emerald card. I do want to stress that Pull the Lever is a dual ink card reserved for this color combination, whereas Wrong Lever can be played in any Emerald deck, and it specifically says choose one. Return a character to the player's hand, and you can do that to either your character or your opponent's character. Or the second ability, which is really good in this color combo, says put a card named Pull the Lever from your discard to the bottom of your deck, then put a chosen character on the bottom of their player's deck. I like this a lot, bro. The ability to bottom deck a card on the opposing side of the board, this is really strong. And right now, Pull the Lever is like $1 card. The Enchanted Rare is about a little bit less than 100 if you can find them on TCG Player. So if you want to play your Emerald Amethyst, you might want to try and pull off this Pull the Lever, Wrong Lever combo.
Yeah, one thing I like about these choose one cards is I really hope that they have a card that comes out later that says your choose one abilities allows you to choose all the abilities. So imagine just being able to bounce something and bottom deck something, or draw two and make your opponent discard. I think that would be a really powerful inclusion. But I will say about the Prince John, yes, warded characters shouldn't have static abilities. They need to be a little balanced. Like, for
Yeah.
example, Alice Savvy Sailor is a warded character, but in order to get her ability off, you have to turn her sideways, meaning she's susceptible to challenges. So warded characters need to be balanced, and I hope the game design team can recognize that and not print cards like Prince John in the future. And we have another list from the Southside Gaming event, this one by Justin Rios, and it's Amber Steel. Look at this, guys. No Whole New World, no Ariel Singer, just a bunch of little guys. And the new Family Dog Lady. I love this card. That was my favorite card when I first saw all of the cards released for Rated Jafar. And I am currently playing something similar to an aggro Amber Steel list. Nothing like this exactly. So this is an interesting take with Rapunzel's Tower, which I actually like a lot. However, I'm not sold on until Red Blue is finally kicked out of the meta, because I think that is just the worst card to have in that matchup. So thankfully, it is inkable. Outside of that, we have Calhoun making its way back into some Amber Steel lists. I haven't been seeing it played a whole lot, so it's good to have that card come back, because I think it's also another powerful card. And again, not being rotated out, which is important to mention. And we have the Penny, the Duel Linked Penny. This character gives a chosen character resist one and removes up to 2 damage from it. You can even choose herself when you enter play. So don't ever feel like you have no target, because when you play her, you can choose herself, meaning she won't take some damage at the beginning of the turn.
Yeah, I feel like they missed the mark when they made the Enchanted Bolt instead of making Enchanted Rhino, because Rhino really feels like the fan favorite of the Lorcana community right now. This is the what? Third, fourth deck we're seeing the Rhino Shift Rhino package. I think we might have underestimated this. I think I might have underestimated this card combination when I was making the videos last week. But yes, Lady Family Dog, man, it's really good in these, I think, dog strategies. Any strategy where you can go really wide on the board and refill your hand. Maybe even a whole new world strat, where you still play aerial but more low to the ground cards. I think it'd be really good. I want to try Lady in some other color combinations as well, especially in decks so you can play Daisy Duck, because I feel like if you play a Daisy Duck or something like me off the Lady, you're getting so much value. You have 2 characters on the board that can quest for 2 with reasonable stats. And I also think Peak Games Referee, like you've said it before, Zach, many times, Peak Games is a god card, and it's in every single steel deck that we're seeing from what I've seen so far.
Heat is the number 1 card selling this past week. So yeah, it probably for a reason, right?
Yeah, speaking of which, selling, I know ladies right now are around like a little bit more than $10 on TCG players. So some of these decks are going to be a little bit more pricier than others. I feel like the Amethyst package is probably where you want to go if you want more of a budget style deck. Whereas, Amber and Steel are becoming to be a little bit more pricier as of this week's meta trends. A couple more low to the ground aggro style decks in this tournament landscape from the Southside Gaming Reign of Jafar tournament. Nathan Chartrand, shout out you for getting top 8 with Turna Dogs. Amber Emerald once again making big waves at the Southside Gaming tournaments out there. This deck, it looks a little bit different than some of the Turnadog lists we're used to. I'm used to. I think a lot of people had big expectations for the Tramp Dapper Rascal and some of the other, Turnadog support cards that were released in the Reign of Jafar set. But this is, one of the only lists that we've been able to find from this opening weekend. And this list really is only featuring the new Lady Decisive Dog. This is a 1-cost character that I think you're replacing for your Nalas or Baloos that has an ability where you can quest for 3 if she has 3 strength or more. And every single time you play a character, she'll gain 1 strength. So this is a perfect card to combo off with your Tramp Enterprising Dog, because Tramp only costs 1 if you have a Lady on board. So turn 1, you can play Lady. Turn 2, you can play a combination of Tramp with any other 1-cost character. You play the 1-cost character first, though, and then you can pump your Lady up to have at least 3 strength and quest for 3 by turn 1. And I don't think it's too hard to continue to cycle this ability off because you play multiple low cost characters that can let you go wide by like turns 3, 4, 5, and you're even playing some extra combo cards to help you out. We have Just in Time here, which is a 3 cost uninkable action from set 1 that'll let you cheat out a 5 cost character. And I even reached out to Nathan on Twitter to kind of get their opinion on this deck and ask why not play any of the other new Chernadog, Lady in the Tramp cards that came out in this set. And they replied to me and they said, need more testing with additional set 8 cards, but I did not end up liking Shift Tramp in testing. I did have Darling Deer in the deck until 2 days ago, so they recently just took out the Darling Deer. Goofy and Shift Pegasus aren't really the just-in-time targets, they said, but with Green Steel being so prevalent, they put in a lot of work, and they feel favored in that matchup, surprisingly. The just-in-time is really for Cricky and Lady, they said. He doesn't want to shift Lady, so instead just-in-time lets them either hover at 3 ink for a while going wide, or when they're at 5 ink, they can play the Lady and grab some cards back from the discard. Also, apparently Cricky on turn 3 is very, very strong, especially if you have the Lady Decisive Dog already on board. So yeah, huge shout out to Nathan for getting top 8 with green, yellow Chernadog. Not really a list that we're used to seeing. I really like the addition of Goofy and Sven in this list, right, Zach?
One thing I want to mention about that Goofy, because yes, I like that a lot, but into that matchup, you can do some lines where you go Pegasus turn 1, maybe play 2 more bodies on turn 2. You can just in time a Goofy, and then you can shift Peggy the turn after, give Goofy evasive for the next turn, give something else ward, and you just have an unstoppable board of high lore questers. Overall, it is a very strong deck. I do want to point out, Kevin, actually, it won't matter how you sequence the Tramp and another 1-drop, because as long as Tramp gives that Lady that strength, it's going to be at 3 strength when you play that extra 1-drop.
Huge shout out to our Discord member and fellow Lorcana YouTuber AZ Aquaman for getting top 8 at his Jafar Case tournament at the J&J Gaming Factory this weekend. Once again, making top 8 with a Mufasa Amber Steel deck list. This is like his bread and butter, bro. Every time AZ Aquaman gets featured on this channel, it's always with a Mufasa Steel deck. And I gotta wonder, Aquaman, if you're watching, what are you going to do if Mufasa gets rotated out? Are you going to switch to the Chief Bogo strategy? There's some pretty cool cards in here from the new set. We're used to this Mufasa strategy by now. It looks kind of like the Diggy Diggy whole deck with Doc, almost like the other Amber Steel list we saw. You're playing Docs, Calhoun, Smees, low to the ground characters so that you can refill your hand with Doc or Rapunzel. We also have some new characters in here. 3 copies of Stitch, the Alien Troublemaker. He's a 4-cost inkable character, 3 strength and 4 willpower, which is not a bad body at all. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may draw a card and gain a lore. I like that, not too bad. It can potentially replace itself and give you some extra lore. So you're gaining some lore while you're challenging. You got Calhoun, you got Stitch. Now, we also have only one copy of Namari, the single-minded rival. I wonder if only 1 copy, because that's all you could find that night. Maybe it is opening weekend. Maybe you want to add more copies. But this Namari, man, it's the first time we're featuring it on today's Meta Watch video, and I think it's a pretty strong card. On play and at the start of your turn, you draw and discard a card. Then for permanently, how many ever cards you have in your discard pile, she's going to have an extra strength. If you have 20 cards in your discard, when you play Namari, she's going to have 20 strength on board.
Yeah, this is, again, his bread and butter, as I like to call it. But overall, Steel Fossa has kind of shown its way in and out of the meta. I know a lot of popular content creators like Laura Gaines have piloted this deck onto a top 16 at a DLC, so you can't sleep on Mufasa strategies. It did win Atlanta, too, if you guys don't remember. And Namari, I would like to see more copies of that card. I hope it was just 1 copy that you only had access to, because I think that's an easy 3 to 4 of in a deck like this.
Yeah, actually, someone in our Discord asked him directly what he would change in the deck list, and he mentioned he would like to add another Namari for sure, and that the new Stitch definitely resolved a couple times. He got to use it he got to use the ability in some of these games to draw and gain a lore. And yeah, he said the mulligan strategy is pretty basic. You're looking for Cindy's, Mr. Smees in the early game so you can heal them off Rapunzel, and that really the only time you want to change your mulligan strategy is against slower decks. So instead of a mulligan for Daisy and Smees, you want to go lower to the ground so you can go really wide fast. Huge shout out Aquaman AZ for making top 8 at his local tournament with Amber Steel Mufasa. Guys, go check out his channel because he definitely gives a much more devoted breakdown to this deck list than what we ever could.
And we have more Amber Steel coming out of the woodworks. This one is at the Reign of Jafar release event hosted by Cardboard Castle Games. And this is by Hurley, and It is a very solid list. I love that we included the Mulan Disguised Soldier. This allows you to kind of cantrip a little bit more and get rid of some uninkables that you might be stuck with. You don't want too many docks in your hand, of course, and you get some value discarding the Lilo if we're able to be coming back from the discard pile. But yeah, we have the Penny coming back in this list and the Lady Family Dog. But we have the Prince. This is a 2 cost uninkable, 0 strength, 5 willpower bodyguard. And that's kind of necessary in a deck like this because you want to be able to go wide. You want to be able to have a bunch of bodies that are hard and difficult to get through. And that Prince has 5 willpower, meaning a fox can't even get rid of it. So it's going to be a very tough card to remove. And if you are playing something like Green Steel, you might not be able to get rid of the early aggression. You might need to find your muses a whole lot early. So this deck can punish a lot of those slower strategies.
I do want to note they're playing 4 copies of the Shift Rhino without any Rhino shift target. So it's looking to me like this Rhino card is just playable overall in Amber Steel, right? Like I don't know. I mean, at first I read it and I still keep reading it, and I think like, is this card really that good? Where like it just has that ability to survive. But no, yeah, you're right. You have to have like a 5 strength or more character to banish it in one challenge. You can't even clear this with a fox. So on turn 4, I feel like it'll survive. Maybe Pluto becomes very strong in this meta because Pluto can contest Rhino, right? But I like the Lady Family Dog addition to this Amber Steel deck list with Mulan. I'm surprised I haven't been seeing the Desperate Plan added in decks like these. You know, I really like Desperate Plan with cards like Mulan and Doc to kind of give you some extra draw engine, but it is uninkable and you probably are limited to the amount of uninkables you can play. This is what the like 5th, 6th Amber Steel list that we go over in this video, Zach Stone, a lot of them being in first place. So it's starting to feel like it's an Amber Steel meta and we're just living in it. But there's still other decks you can play that are not Amber Steel, like this top 4 deck list from the same tournament by Blake Wood. Another Emerald Amethyst deck, very similar. We're playing a bunch of Diablos with our Foxes, our Genies, our Peter Pans, so that we have some evasive characters for the mirror matches. We also have some discard synergy, you know, Prince John, very powerful card like we mentioned earlier, but we have 2 copies of the new Flynn Rider. This is a 4-cost uninkable character, 1 strength, 4 willpower that can quest for 3, and it's always nice to have a 3 lore quester in a deck like Emerald Amethyst. Whenever this character is challenged, the challenging player may choose and discard a card. If they don't, you gain 2 lore. So it's almost like questing for 5 potentially for a 4 lore character, or you know, if your opponent doesn't want you to gain that extra 2 lore, they're going to have to discard a card. And if you have the Prince John set up already, you're just drawing. You're just gaining more and more value every time that happens. I think my favorite part about this card, though, is that if your opponent has no cards in hand, you're pretty much going to gain that 2 lore guaranteed.
It's a lot of lore burst for that one card, and you kind of need it because a lot of these Emerald decks have a slower strategy to win the race. However, the Amethyst package can make up for that with a lot of aggressive power. But the Flynn Rider could help close out some games necessary in this kind of format, and overall, Diablo is still a card you have to build your deck around.
Yeah, definitely got to build around Diablo, and I think that's what Richard Perry had in mind when he built this Amethyst Sapphire Jafar deck list, bro. I love it. We've been seeing this list kind of pop off towards the end of this recent format. We have some new additions to it, though. In terms of how you out Diablo, we have the 3 copies of Iago, the Giant Spectral Parrot, 4 copies of Genie Wish Fulfilled. We have our Bell Accomplished Mystic to potentially move 3 damage around, actually, and then 4 copies of Elsa Fitzspirit. But look, 2 copies of our Monstro, Invasive Whale, very strong card. We talked about this a little while ago. And we're playing Jafar Shift Line so that every time we draw a card, once this is exerted, you can go ahead and start gaining some lore. And one of the things I noticed immediately is you can sing multiple times with this Monstro. So if you have Jafar exerted, you could just start singing friends on the other side over and over again.
It's a nice way to get some additional card draw. On top of that, you're winning the race a little bit better because you have Jafar gaining you extra lore. But yeah, you have to play cards like Crochet Mallet, and you have to play cards like the Lamp, and these are a little bit slower, so you're kind of building your board piece by piece. So aggro decks start to get a little ahead early on, but you have to be able to check them with your rush characters like Fox and the Croquet Mallet giving anything rush that you choose to play. So even that Jafar, Keeper of Secrets, This is from chapter 1. So we got from set 1 cards all the way through set 8, taking full advantage of the rotation period.
Yeah, I like the idea of Croquet Mallet. There's situations where you can give your Jafar Striking Illusionist a rush, and suddenly he's exerted the turn you played him. So you can swing into a character, and now you have the Jafar there in a situation where now if you have enough ink to play Finders Keeper, Sail, Friends on the Other Side, even the Lamp, because what's really cool is you can set up the Lamp before you play your Jafar, right? You can play the Lamp like on turn 2, and then later on in the game when you have like 8 ink, you can play the Jafar, you banish Croquet Mallet, you trigger your Lamp, and you're able to draw while your Jafar is exerted, because now your Jafar is exerted off of that rush ability. So Blurple, a lot of ways you can play Blurple, man. And last but definitely not least, Zach Stone, we have another Amber Steel list. Sorry, we just have to include Ruben Luna Sousa. Shout out you for making top cut at this Reign of Jafar deck list. Another Amber
Steel
Steel.
Eating good.
Amber Steel, bro. Amber Steel might be the most consistent deck, the best deck. We're seeing it like, just have some huge dominance, and not just this tournament, bro. Not just this tournament. I don't know if I just didn't get the memo. Maybe I'm not in the right discords, but at the Southside Gaming tournament, the overall breakdown, it had more Amber Steel than any other color combination. People have just been hyping this deck up behind my back, and I didn't even realize it. We have 3 copies of Goofy in this deck list alongside the Darling Deer, which is a 5-cost character that'll give one of your characters +2 lore. So suddenly your Lawrence can quest for 4 that turn, right? Then we have the Goofy, which at the end of your turn, you may remove 1 damage from each character you have. And for each other character that you did this to, you can ready them. So there's some pretty interesting synergy here. We got Smee that you can heal up if he's been dealing damage to himself, right?
Definitely that, on top of the fact that you have a lot of bodies that can hold damage because they have 3 or 4 willpower, and that's very critical. You can't sleep on that Rhino showing up in every single Amber Steel list. I mean, gosh, this is a very, very polarizing card, it looks like. Being able just to have a solid character you can shift as early as turn 2 to help combat with some of the board. It does get rid of opposing Daisy Ducks, and that's something that you got to mention, because that's what we're also seeing in a lot of these Amber Steel lists as well. So Daisy Duck is just a card that's starting to show her face a little bit more, and the Lady Family Dog being able to play the Daisy Duck or other lower costed characters for free. So you love to see it. As an Amber Steel enjoyer, I like that we're going, back and forth between Steel Song and Ariel and Whole New World, and we're shifting back to this more aggressive diggy diggy hole style decks. But we aren't seeing the Seven Dwarfs mine, so it might be a locationless meta, by the way it's all looking like.
Yeah, I think with that Monstro in the meta, I don't think you can play locations for the most part, especially not any locations that are 6 strength or lower. Locations do not seem too good right now. Amber's still looking really hot from what it seems, and we're going to go ahead and mulligan with one of these decks now and give our opinions on how you should be strategizing when playing these. But in the meantime, make sure you hit that like, comment, and subscribe button if you like this content so far. What deck are we picking, Zach?
Not this one.
Not
Let's
Amber
just
Steel.
Let's pick
Who do we like?
the fourth list we saw. The 4th Amber Steel list we saw. So not Lucas, not Travers.
Oh, you want to do Amber Steel though again? Didn't
Oh, I don't know. We could do Green Steel if you want.
Let's do Green Steel. Let's do Green Steel because Green Steel got first place.
I want the do you want this list or do you want the one with Chip?
Let's go ahead and do the Chip list. I like Chip. Chip is cool. Here we have the 3rd place list, Dale's Toolbox from the Southside Gaming tournament. This list looks very similar to the winning list from that tournament. Really, only a couple differences. So, we're gonna go ahead and mulligan strategy with Emerald Steel post Reign of Jafar meta. Zach, you've been playing this deck a little bit more than I have, so I'm gonna give my opinion first. Let's say we're going first. We don't know the matchup. I would personally go ahead and get rid of every action except for one because I want to have this Shift Diablo line, and I really want to find the Shift Diablo. So I might even go as far as to put this Ursula back. Is that too greedy? What do you think?
Well, I have a little bit of I think if you're going to want to increase your chances of finding the Diablo, I'd recommend just putting back everything except the 1-cost Diablo, because 1, you are going to be increasing your chances of finding the Diablo, and 2, you have a lot more actions that you can also find. And don't forget, when you play the Diablo in turn 1, you're more than likely going to shift Diablo on the next turn, which means you have a chance to draw another card, which could be an action. I want to increase my chances of that happening. And if I don't know the matchup, I think it's safe to just go for that strategy. Overall, if you do have information on what your opponent's playing, you can consider keeping cards like Ursula Deceiver or even Sudden Chill, because if they're playing like a Sapphire deck, you want as many cards to rip cards out of their hand as possible. So if you are going to keep any action, Sudden Chill might be the safer one to keep. However, if I don't know what I'm playing against, I'm honestly putting everything back except Diablo.
Now, let's say you were playing against Amber Steel and you're going first. Is there ever a world where you keep this Pete and you put back the other cards so you can kind of go for maybe a Ursula Pete curve?
It's a little tricky because when I have cards like Pete, I kind of like being on the draw more than the play. I'd rather be developing something like an Ursula Deceiver of all, or even a Prince John, because that's a very difficult card for them to remove early on. Pete's a little bit better when you have more of an established board. So if you already have the Shift Diablo line, I can recommend keeping Pete as a way to fill out your turn 3 a little bit better. But I think just keeping the Ursula would make more sense if I knew my opponent was on Amber Steel. It's probably the only 2-drop I'm scared of seeing when I do play Amber Steel myself. So I don't want to see that card come down at all.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and see what happens going first. We don't know the matchup. We're gonna put everything back except this Diablo, and we did land on our shift Diablo a target, our package. Look at that, Zach. We can ink a P
And
turn
another
one and
action.
another action. Exactly. Yeah, we got the shift with the other action, just like you said. What happened? I like that. Yeah, this is why I like these videos too. I feel like I learn. We have these conversations, and we can really go back and forth and see like what is the most optimal way to find the line, the strategy we're going for. And now we can shift Diablo by turn 2, and then even get to this Prince John potentially. And if we draw another action, we can hold on to our Hypnotize for the Prince John combo. Let's go ahead and find another hand, right? Shall we?
And here for our second example, we have another opening hand. This time it's a little bit different. We have the 3-cost Diablo and no 1-cost Diablo. And we have a lot of strong cards that we'd like to have, but I'm a little curious to see how I even want to mulligan with this. So my first thought is, if I have no knowledge into what my opponent's playing, I can't assume that Diablo's even the safest card to go all in on. So I don't want to just keep the Diablo 3-cost if I don't have the 1-cost already. I think it's a little bit different if I have the 1-cost versus a 3-cost, but I'd rather not reverse the roles, because you are going to lock yourself into some interesting lines of play if you do have to keep that Diablo. So I think it's a little bit better. And again, this is a little bit of a trickier hand. So I think you can set up a lot of lines with Double Singer Ursula, Sudden Chill, and Prince John. I think it's even worth considering keeping the Muses in case you're playing against other aggro matchups, and potentially putting back the rest of the cards, like putting back your Strength, putting back your Diablo and your Chip, keeping the uninkable amount low here. And I think Prince John is pretty much the only uninkable I don't mind keeping in my opening hand. It's going to be very good if it does pull off, but you have not too many 1-drop characters and 2-drop characters anyway in the deck. You're pretty much looking to start most of your turns on turn 3 and turn 4 and so on, and you have all the cards you want to do that. So it might make sense to keep this. However, I'm still unsure because I haven't played enough games with Green Steel. So guys, if you are Green Steel enthusiasts, drop your opinions down below on how we should mulligan with this hand. But I think I'm keeping Sudden Chill, Prince John, and Ursula. I think I'm actually going to put back the Muses too, because it's a little bit too slow, and I don't want to be forced to ink the Muses if I have no other inkable cards in my hand. But Kevin, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I 100% agree. At first, when you were thinking about keeping the muses, I thought maybe that might be a little too greedy. But I do like what you said. We don't play too many 1-cost, 2-cost characters and actions in this deck. It's only 1 Cove and the 4 Diablo 1-drops, and then followed by 4 more for Ursula. So there's not really much to dig for like your early curve, for example. I don't think keeping the Shift Diablo is worth the risk. It's uninkable, and if we're gonna keep any uninkable, it's definitely gonna be Prince John. I think Prince John is overpowered. I think it's the best card in the deck, and second best card in the deck next to Beyond the Horizon. And you can't really, keep beyond the horizon in your opening hand or anything. So I totally understand what you're saying there. And I really want to stress this part, especially about Lorcana or just card games in general. Your deck has a strategy, right? And when you build your deck and you're playtesting by yourself, you're testing hands, of course, you're going to have a specific strategy and mind and a certain line you can go through, shift Diablo, move it to the Cove, sing songs, etc. However, you're not guaranteed that strategy when you're playing in actual games or tournaments. And I think it's important to, not get tunnel vision, as Axe likes to tell me. And sometimes that tunnel vision comes from playing one deck to switching to another deck. I'm so used to playing Ruby Amethyst, and I want to see a one cost character on turn one. I always want to see a one cost character on turn two. So when I look at these decks, you just reminded me that I don't have to do that with this deck strategy. I don't have to see a one cost character on turn one. Our main strategy really does start to kick off from turns 3 to 5. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. So yeah, I do like this. I like the idea of not needing to commit to a one cost Diablo shift strategy, because there is other ways for you to win in this deck, and I think knowing how to do that is really important, especially if you're going first or second and knowing what you need to go for. But we're gonna go ahead and put back these 4 cards, see what we get, and bam! I feel a little punished, but also, I'm still hopeful. We have just a bunch of 3 cost cards in our hand and the one sudden chill. I think opening hand would probably have to ink one of the Ursulas and then see where we can go from there. There's certain matchups where this could be the best hand ever, and certain matchups where this could be a really bad hand, right?
Yeah, I can say that if you are facing against one of those early Amber Steel aggro decks that we showcased earlier, you will have a tougher time because they're going to be deploying Smees, Daisies, and a bunch of 2 Lord Questers before you can even get a single body on the board. But you have a lot of ways of punishing those strategies with Muses and Ursula singing 2 songs and getting to remove a lot of those cards. So don't forget, guys, that you have to just build and play to what your deck's trying to do, and you can't force certain things to happen because you will start to crumble with your own deck.
Here we have another hand. This hand consists of 2 Morph Space Goo, a Shift Pete, Shift Diablo, Ursula Deceiver of All, Storm Rageon, and Prince John. Very interesting hand. We have a decent amount of uninkables, but we have a turn 2 play and an ability to shift on as turn 3. This is one of those hands where I'm like, man, I'm really bad at Lorcana or I'm really bad at Emerald Steel because I have no idea what to do. My immediate reaction is like, oh, I don't want to keep any of this if I'm going first. Maybe I keep Prince John, or I don't even know, dude. Like, is this too greedy to keep? What lines do you go for here? What lines do you really try and hit here? I think if I'm going first, right? I like this shift line. I like Morph into Pete Space Pirate. I think it's very strong. Yeah, I can't ask for much more than that. We have a lot of songs we can sing after, so I don't think we need to keep anything other than this. What's your opinion, Zach Stone? What are you trying to do going first blind? Like going into like a blind matchup?
Yes, I do want to mention that there's a lot of different ways I would mulligan with this if I had more knowledge of my opponent's matchup. However,
Yes.
without that knowledge, I think it's better to just play on the side of caution. One thing I will want to point out is Morph is probably one of your better 2-drop cards. If anything, it's the best early card to be playing in this deck. And I like keeping double Morph because you have an inkable card that you probably don't want to see too much later on. It's like keeping an extra Diablo when you have one already as a way to ink something right away. It's something that I've been learning as a player in this game, is that there are certain cards that are just better in the inkwell than others, and it starts to be more of the early cards when you have a more mid-range strategy. So keeping double morph allows you to also be a little bit more flexible with the way your shift lines work. You can even consider keeping the Diablo and the Ursula 3, because I think you have a really clean play of going morph on 2, turn 3, you play Ursula, you shift Diablo, and you give your opponent 2 options, 2 threats they have to remove, and that's very powerful. You even can consider keeping the Storm Rage on too, because one, you're keeping enough ink in your hand, you're going to probably find an inkable. I wouldn't keep the Shift Pete because it's a little too late in the game, and kind of only there for like, Amber Steel strategy, especially Steel Song. It's like the best card to play against that deck, absolutely by far. However, I think it's fine putting it back and just getting a little bit more early pressure. Again, even finding their 1-cost Diablo so you can have a really strong potential board. And there's a lot of threats that you can deploy later in the game that like Shift Beast, for example. So it's fine to keep double morph. I probably would keep these 5 cards just to be a little bit safer. You already are keeping 2 uninkables, so you have to justify that by keeping 2 inkable cards, and the morph is probably the better one of the two.
I like that. Yeah. Okay. You completely changed my perspective on how are we supposed to go about that. I didn't even see that initial line of like morph shift Diablo play Ursula the same turn. Keeping the Storm Rage on to try and keep make sure we have some songs to either sing twice or ditch off our Diablo. And yeah, we saw another Ursula Deceiver and a Beast Tragic Hero, which is actually insane because now we have just multiple options, right? Zach, you can go morph on turn 2, turn 3, you can shift into the Beast instead. And then, or even just go play the Ursula and then shift your Diablo somehow. If you get another action though, then you're going to be able to sing that Diablo when you play it, or if your Ursula survives, you can sing twice. A lot of versatility in Emerald Steel. I think that's why this deck is so powerful because you can kind of you can kind of grab the wheel and take it whichever direction you want. Whether you're gonna, go for a more aggressive strategy or start controlling the hand in the early game, Emerald Steel just has a lot of options. Okay, here's another hand, Zach. So I'm gonna shoot you this scenario. Let's say this is our opening hand. We're going second. It's the finals of the Southside Gaming Tournament, and you're playing against Ruby Amethyst.
I'm going to really recognize that Diablo is not going to be my main strategy. And when Diablo is not your main strategy, Ursula Singer is going to be your next best tool to get rid of a lot of cards and force your opponent into certain awkward scenarios. So I would like keeping the Ursula Double Singer, and I like keeping Morph too, because you can shift on Beast, and that's another good card. Again, very difficult for them to remove right away. They are going to probably waste a few resources on your Morph if they have access to. So I'm keeping the Deceiver of All. I'm keeping the Morph. I'm probably not keeping the 2-cost Ursula because I want this card later. I want to literally play it on turn 5 and 6 to rip Be Prepared out of my opponent's hand. I'm also putting back the Peats because, again, I want those later. I don't want to find them and have to ink them early on. So having 2 in my opening mulligan gets me know that 2 more, I won't be able to draw, at least 2 less copies now if after I mulligan. So I think it's safe to just keep the Morph and the Deceiver of All. Again, you're on the draw, so you are looking for your Prince Johns. You are looking for a lot of pressure early on against Ruby Amethyst. And after mulliganing, I think we got what we wanted. Honestly, we got exactly what we wanted. We have Morph on 2, we have Ursula on 3, we can shift Diablo. And on top of that, we have Ursula Diablo as very powerful threats, and they have to decide which ones they want to brawl if they play that card. And then on the following turn, you have Prince John to double sing your sudden chill, draw 2 more cards, and I think your Ruby Amethyst opponent is cooked after that. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I think if you open up Diablo Prince John, there's like very little Ruby Amethyst can do. Oh my goodness. Yeah, seeing this hand and watching you describe how you mulligan that piece is the reason why I think this deck is so good and so broken, and why Prince John is so good. This card is very strong. I like the ability. I just think that there's not much interaction with it. So yeah, being able to set up this line right here with Morph into a Shift Diablo, and really we got this hand because you put us there. You put us in that position. And I think that's what the mulligan strategy is really about in Lorcana in this game. You have to keep your options open and also like understand like what are the most important pieces of this puzzle that you have, and how can you use that to not guarantee, but make the odds as the highest in your favor to win, to get to 21st in the opponent. Because in order for Rubiam to stop like these type of curves, if you're going second, they literally have to have cards like Sisu, Sith, Shift, Sisu, brawls, Elsa's like back to back to back. So I think you have a pretty safe line here, and then you have that ability to kind of go Muses instead of Prince John if you need to the next turn.
All right, everyone. We have gone over our mulligan strategies with Emerald Steel, and I think this was a very good deck to go over because, one, this is a deck that does revolve around knowing your opponent's deck and knowing what cards are going to be more important and more impactful in that matchup. However, when you have no knowledge of what your opponent's playing and you are going to blind mulligan, I think it's very important to not get too greedy when you are making your mulligan decisions, because even though Prince John is the greediest of them all, greed is this deck's worst enemy. When you force lines too often in this deck, in my experience, it ends up falling apart. So you want things to kind of come naturally. You want to play to your outs like all card games, right? But in this deck, specifically, playing to your outs is very important. And putting yourself in the position to win has been the forefront of all of my theory in playing and technical play of card games. However, this deck, it does start to get a little linear when you have the advantage and you are winning the game. A lot of the lines do come naturally. You're just ripping your opponent's hand, forcing their cards off the board, and overall you're pretty much stopping the opponent from getting to play the game, and that can be fun for some people.
Emerald Steel is much more of a control deck than anything else. You're controlling the board, you're controlling the hand, heck, you're controlling your opponent's, mentality, because they are going to get frustrated when you end up with Diablo, Prince John, discard their entire hand, and combo that off with Beyond the Horizon, and we might have the best deck of the format, my Lorcana Goons. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you're still here, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because it does support the channel. Clearly, you guys like the content, so you might as well stick around. But if you guys are in the Ohio area and you want to test your Lorcana Rain of Jafar deck list, or any of the deck lists you just saw in the video, pull up to the Glass City Showdowns 5K on June 21st. They're going to have content creators, some artists, and a bunch of prizing, and even side events for any Illuminators that want to go and play some tournaments out there in Ohio. So huge shout out to them for organizing a 5K tournament. Hopefully they stream it so we can watch it here from home. But thanks again to all of these tournament organizers for hosting these huge Lorcana tournaments. Until then, remember to stay tuned to Lorcana Goons. Support us in any way you can by clicking those links in the description below. And if you guys want to be featured on our weekly Meta Mondays video, drop your deck lists in our description. Hit us up on Twitter, social media platforms when you do well at your tournaments, and we would love to feature it on the channel. So every Monday we got these videos. We're going over the meta, going over mulligans. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks so much for supporting. And remember, we'll see you goons next time.